I've made on the internet now somewhere around 130 videos about Emily Dickinson. I have spent probably, I would be willing to wager between 6 and 9 months of my life with her poetry, right? If you were to just put the amount of time reading and analyzing and talking about her poetry lined up on a timeline, probably that amount of time would be between 3 and 6 months of actual time. One thing that has become very apparent to me over that amount of time working with Emily Dickinson's poetry is that Emily Dickinson has probably the greatest opening lines in all of poetry, and in that way it's sort of a gift that she did not title her poems. Basically, with her first lines, her opening lines serving as the title of the poem, I don't know that it could get any stronger than that. When you delve a little bit deeper into Emily Dickinson, you start spending a little bit more time with her, it becomes pretty apparent that really the opening couplets are very strong. Then you realize that oftentimes the opening stanza is the most important stanza of an Emily Dickinson poem, or at least the most interesting. And the poem in question today, guys, the opening line might really be all you need in order to have some interpretation of the poem as a whole. The opening line here is so strong, so unique, so interesting, as to essentially rid the rest of the poem out of necessity. This video is part of 3 separate playlists here on the channel. Number 1 being obviously the Echoes of Emily playlist, but number 2 being a playlist of Emily Dickinson poetry discussions, and third, the general playlist for poetry discussions. If you like or appreciate the work that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other literature lovers. And if you find yourself here by chance but not design, literature is the only thing that I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week. So consider hitting the subscribe button to stick around for more literature in the future. I taste a liquor never brewed from tankards scooped in pearl. Not all the Frankfurt berries yield such an alcohol. Inebriate of air am I, and debauchee of dew, reeling through endless summer days from inns of molten blue. When landlords turn the drunken bee out of the foxglove's door, when butterflies renounce their drams, I shall but drink the more. Till seraphs swing their snowy hats, and saints to windows run to see the little tippler leaning against the sun. So this is a poem where I'm not sure exactly how much of the intervening paragraphs, or stanzas, I guess I should say, that you want to look at. Really, for me, the entirety of the interest in this poem is generated right here in stanza 1. I taste a liquor never brewed from tankards scooped in pearl. Not all the Frankfurt berries yield such an alcohol. In fact, the entirety of what I want to talk about with this poem really is the opening line. I taste a liquor never brewed. There's a lot of things that you can do with this poem. I think that the ultimate conceit, and I know I've said this word a lot in this series, in the Echoes of Emily series, but the core conceit essentially of poetry is that somewhere therein we're looking at metaphor. We're looking at metaphor for life itself. We're looking at metaphor for the human experience. We're looking at metaphor to deal with what it means to be us. We just have to understand that there will be some journey along the way getting from metaphor to application. And this is a difficult poem for me because what the poem itself is one of Emily Dickinson's more fun poems to read, but kind of it's all throwaway if you were looking for a metaphor for life. I taste a liquor never brewed from tankards scooped in pearl. Not all the Frankfurt berries yield such an alcohol. Inebriate of air am I, and debauchee of dew, reeling through endless summer days from ends of molten blue. This whole stanza here, it's interesting for sure. So let me get into my interpretation. Again, this is the interesting part here, just because of what it means. A liquor never brewed is fermentation without actualization. If you taste a liquor, liquor means a fermented liquid. A liquor never brewed, brewed is the part that gets you to fermentation. Tasting a liquor never brewed is tasting the part that makes you drunk without tasting the liquid itself. The liquor, therefore, is intoxicating, but cannot be drank. I taste a liquor never brewed from tankards scooped in pearl. Not all the Frankfurt berries yield such an alcohol. So we are, in fact, talking about the alcoholic part of things. Intoxication without actualization. What I think this is talking about is lust. What I think this is talking about is a love from afar, but not just a hoity-toity, oh, wouldn't that be nice type of love, not a puppy dog type of love. When you're talking about drunkenness, when you're talking about losing control of oneself, that sounds a lot more like lust than not, doesn't it? And look, there is an element of lust in love. I think that anytime you are with someone whom you really do love, there is a little part of you that is willing to be powerless in the moment, willing to give up your control of whatever is going on. That's kind of what it is to be drunk. You have less you have less inhibition, right? You are more willing to dance on the dance floor and look like a fool because you don't care what other people think. There's a large part of love that feels that way as well. I taste a liquor never brewed is in essence to me communicating I feel that type of lustful love, that type of loving lust that is without the relationship part of things. We have Emily Dickinson, someone who was notoriously a loner, someone who was the lady in white, someone who was a recluse, someone who was locked away in the attic for years at a time, someone who ended up with such loneliness on her hands, well, maybe not loneliness, such isolation, I guess I should say, on her hands, that she was able to write 1,775 of the most powerful and impactful poems ever you will read. So, coming to that argument, the argument saying that this poem is about lust or love, you can say love, but I think that there is a powerlessness about this argument. There's a powerlessness to tasting a liquor never brewed. There is a powerlessness to drunkenness. So, if you will, allow me that interpretation, because I think you can make it about a lot of things. I think you can make this about writing itself. I taste a liquor never brewed. I am involved in this world of writing without ever submitting for publication, right? You could make all sorts of nuanced interpretations of this. To me, it feels endlessly true. It feels indelibly true. It feels nothing but the truth about this poem, that it is that type of argument, the type of argument that says this is about lust, this is about love, this is about kind of that marriage between those two feelings. So if I'm right, okay, allow me this reading that I am right about this. And this is one of the more interesting things about this poem. How much does the rest of this poem really develop that idea? I taste a liquor never brewed, from tankards scooped in pearl. Not all the Frankfurt berries yield such an alcohol. Inebriate of air am I, and debauchee of dew, reeling through endless summer days from inns of molten blue. When landlords turn the drunken bee out of the foxglove's door, when butterflies renounce their drams, I shall but drink the more. Till seraphs swing their snowy hats, and saints to windows run, to see the little tippler leaning against the sun. Now, I don't see anything there that is more compelling. I don't see anything there that is more in depth. I don't see anything there that is more distilled than this opening line. That opening line does all that the rest of the poem does and more. Now, you could very easily say, well, yeah, that means you have a bad interpretation of the poem. And I get it. I can't come to any other conclusion about this poem. I just can't. That opening line is so powerful. That opening line is so good. This is the only interpretation that I have for this poem, no matter how far into it I get. No matter how many times I read these stanzas and I say, okay, from ends of molten blue, what are we doing with that? Debauchee of dew? What are we saying there? I can't get any further than this interpretation right here. Intoxication without actualization is the lust. It is not the act of procreation. It is not the relationship itself. It's this feeling right here. Now, nihilism. Person plus liquor equals the desired outcome. Drunk, right? Person plus liquor equals drunk. Drunk being the desired outcome. The poem says skip the middleman. You taste a liquor never brewed. Skip that middleman of brewing. Get the liquor anyway. Get the effect of drunkenness anyway. In essence, that person equals drunk is a nihilistic argument. Not completely nihilistic, but if we're saying get rid of all of the processes that are not necessary for your desired outcome, your own individual ideas, your own individual values, your value in this poem, it turns out, is drunkenness. Get rid of the middle man. The middle man there isn't doing much. Hauntological interpretation. Drunkenness is being out of control, right? Drunkenness is being sort of unconscious, but existing. If you've been blackout drunk, you know what that's like. You know, in your mind, there are flashes of the things that you had been doing the night before. There are instances in your brain of what had been. It is a ghost of you. Drunkenness, I would argue, in that way, is a type of spectrality. the type of spectrality in this poem which is set up for the future. The brewing is the work of the present/past. You can brew, you can have brewed, there is no future tense for brew. The future idea would be the drunkenness, would be the consumption of the liquor. So, in a way, and this wasn't an easy idea to sort of try to squeeze out of this poem. Drunkenness is a type of spectrality. What we have in the poem then is a drunkenness. I taste a liquor never brewed. I am a debauchee of dew. We have a drunken state that is minus all of the past work that should have gone into it. Part of hauntology is saying the future is canceled because the work of today, the work of yesteryear, did not go as it should have gone. The ideas of the future we used to have were flying cars and telepathy. We got faster cars and minds that don't work quite so far. So if we are to make the argument that what hauntology is saying is that the future we used to think of has been canceled because the work was never put in, the promises were never kept, saying I taste a liquor never brewed is implying that the future ghostliness, the future drunkenness, the future spectrality of the individual is on its way despite the work of today never having been done. I taste a liquor never brewed, from tankards scooped in pearl. Not all the Frankfurt berries yield such an alcohol. Inebriate of air am I, and debauchee of dew, reeling through endless summer days from inns of molten blue. When landlords turn the drunken bee out of the foxglove's door, when butterflies renounce their drams, I shall but drink the more, till seraphs swing their snowy hats, and saints to windows run to see the little tippler leaning against the sun.